my sepsis story started in late September 22. So I was around my partner's house, and I all of a sudden at night started feeling quite poorly. So in terms of when I say poorly, I felt really, really cold, but I was, normal body temperature, but really, really cold. And I felt that almost I had to literally go and sit in, hot water. And I felt really sick. So, you just put it down to, I'm coming down with something, as everybody usually does. The following day, I had a day off work and I felt really, really poorly, to the point where I actually ran a bath and I sat in the bath for about half an hour, just kept filling it back up. Then it later progressed to projectile vomiting. So I was being really, really sick. And at that point, me and my family assumed either COVID or something, slightly worse, like a tummy bug or something. And all of a sudden, then about the second to third day in, I got a really, really horrible pain in my arm. So the right side of my arm was really hot, and there was redness in the inner part of my arm there. But at this point, my mum was taking my temperature and I didn't have a temperature. So it was kind of like, a bit of a laugh and a joke. You're a hypochondriac, you'll be absolutely fine, sort of thing. And I don't blame anybody for that, but that was kind of what I thought too. And then it just got progressively really bad, and I mean to the point where I couldn't lift my arm, and I just knew my body. I knew that something wasn't right, and when I say that, I stress that so much. I knew. I myself, no matter what anybody told me, I just knew. So I actually phoned 111. They advised after the assessment to call an out-of-hours doctor. That doctor then got me an appointment at my local surgery, and I went down and I saw my doctor, Dr. Gubby, and he assessed the red patch on my arm, and then the initial thoughts were cellulitis. At that point, on the 26th of September, he gave me a letter to go to the emergency department at the North Staffs Hospital. So I went there, and at the time I had a long sleeve gym top on, and I got there, they signed me in. And at this point, nobody even said the word sepsis. It was nothing, I wasn't even assessed as an urgent priority. They gave me some paracetamol because I was in that much pain. Sorry, it makes me a bit emotional. They gave me some paracetamol because I was in that much pain. And I just felt, I was saying to them, I'm in such agony. I even went to the receptionist and said, can you please cut my top? I've still got that top. I said, you need to cut it. And then they opened it, and all of the blood and all of my arm had gone black, because it had progressed so rapidly that the blood cells in my arm actually started to die. So then at this point, they took me in, and the lady pulled me aside. At this point, they gave me some really strong medication, and they said, we're going to have to keep her in. The lady at this point, she said, that is not cellulitis. We don't think that's cellulitis. Anyway, the next day, I was in hospital. I was pretty out of it by then, but what I've been told, at this point, they didn't actually know what was wrong with me. They were giving me IVs. I was on a constant drip of medication, and they couldn't figure out what it was. So they took me down for surgery to actually open up the wound. I opened it up and to see what it was. They couldn't figure out what it was, so they had to scrape some things out of my arm and put it in a petri dish. At this point, I had septic shock. I had acute liver failure. All my organs started shutting down. So at this point, they had to induce me into a coma, because it had taken hold of me so quickly that I was not responding. At this point is where my mother got the call, it's really serious. We don't understand what's wrong. So they had to literally take what was in my arm, put it in about 6 petri dishes, and treat it with antibiotics to figure out what was wrong. In the end, I had something called necrotizing fasciitis. So what that is it's a wound. So I get quite bad eczema on my hands. That the bug has gone in through there, travelled up my arm. It's a flesh-eating bug, and it ultimately leads to sepsis. But I mean, within about a 24-hour to 48-hour period, there's no kind of leeway with it. So at this point, they were scraping out obviously all of the infection, but at that point it was the sepsis, the blood poisoning, that was really, really getting me. So they actually contemplated removing my arm because they didn't believe that they were going to, be able to get rid of it, and just wondered, would I have my arm use, because they've gone that far down into my arm. So I was in the coma for about 4 to 5 days. And on the 5th day, they actually said, she's coming round, we can actually bring her back round now. And this is where it kind of just started. So they brought me back round and I was, receiving treatment. But obviously because of the septic shock, I had liver failure, everything had just shut down completely. I couldn't wee on my own. I didn't know when I needed to wee. I couldn't walk properly. I couldn't, make sense of anything. And then after that, I stayed in hospital until the end of, for quite a while. I had a further 6 operations to clear out the infection of necrotizing fasciitis. And they did a double skin graft with pig skin. So they took flesh from my thigh and completely reworked my whole upper arm underneath. Intense physiotherapy, intense recovery, and then I was on clindamycin for a long period after that because of I got sepsis, and I was so highly divulged into the fact that I could get infected again. So yeah, that's my sepsis story, and I'm slowly recovering. But the main thing that I just want to do is just spread awareness, because the amount of people that I speak to and I say I had sepsis and they go, "What's sepsis?" And it's like, it's mind-blowing. But I say that now, but I think back and even I was like, what really is sepsis? What actually is it? And it's blood poisoning, but sepsis can come, it can lead from other things. It's not just sepsis. Sepsis comes from a whole variety of things. So yeah, I'm on the mend now, but really, really just, how it affected everything in day-to-day life, how it affects me now, and how everything, my whole entire world has changed just from, that blip of time. So yeah, that's my sepsis story as such. So it's affected me physically, because it sounds quite, shallow, but coming from being a 23, 24-year-old girl, going out all the time, wearing whatever you want to do, not kind of the old sense of I don't care what anybody thinks of me sort of attitude, to then being in absolute agony in front of the mirror because it's not just a physical scar, it's a scar of people don't know what's happened to me. So day to day now, people look at me differently. It's kind of they look at me and kind of sympathize with me, which I totally understand. But day-to-day aspects of things, I take into consideration now, and it shouldn't last, in older age and things, when things get a little bit more. But just day to day, when I'm wearing something short or anything like that, I'll have to have that reassurance of does it look okay? Do I look okay? And it's just something that day to day I'm working through, and that obviously it's a reminder of what I've been through and a reminder of how strong that I really am. So that has taken me a really long time to grasp, and sorry, but I just think that there's so many people worse off, and you have to really count your blessings, and these amazing doctors saved my life. So if that means that I have to have a scar, and I get to spend the next couple of years with my family, and and have a family of my own and a career, that's a small price to pay for such a so yeah. So I knew that obviously when I'd come out of hospital, I couldn't drive, I couldn't even lift my arm up, I couldn't I couldn't go to the toilet on my own. So that part of it was a long recovery before I even thought about work. So then again, that's another effect. I went from an income that I could support myself on, live on my own, to giving up my house, giving up my car, and going back in with my mum, which is somebody that it's just crazy how one stint in hospital and your life completely changes. So I had to do a lot of physiotherapy, a lot of hospital appointments, a lot of bloods to be taken. They monitored me so closely for such a long time. And then when I could finally got the go ahead to drive, that's when I started looking, because I just thought, there's no point, I need to get back out there, I need to gain the confidence back, and how it's affected me in work. I've got a great boss, a fantastic boss who is completely aware of what's happened, and I can go into him at any time and say, I feel really anxious about this, and you know, I used to be a manager, and now I couldn't at the minute, like the whole thing of it. So I'm just slowly building my confidence, but this is, you know, going on 7 months later, so it's never going to leave me, and it'll always, and I know it sounds, you know, people have been through a lot worse, you know, but everyone's story is different and it affects everybody differently. So at the minute I'm really enjoying life. I'm getting back into the swing of things. I've just moved out again. So we do recover and we do get there. So, you know, it's a long journey, a long old journey, but you've just got to, I know it sounds really silly, you've got to stay positive, you've got to get up in the morning, you've got to eat your food. And I've done a bit too much of that, enjoying. So but yeah, so I'm really enjoying work at the minute and got straight back into it, and it's really helped me. I would tell the young people about sepsis, that sepsis will kill you. Sepsis it isn't, you know, a cold, it isn't a flu. It can happen to anybody at any time, and you don't have to be in any kind of, you know, strange situation. It will hit you and it will affect you. And you know how serious it is in terms of, you know, the whole knowledge around it. We don't pay attention to it because it's not such a common, you know, it is very common, but it's not such a commonly talked about illness. And I would say to young people, you know, wash your hands, clean your cuts, pay attention to what it is that you're doing, you know, if you're in an environment that, you know, health and safety. But don't be so naive to the fact, and get out of your bubble, because it happened to, you know, the whole cliche of, you know, I never thought it would happen to me. I only read about it online. Well, it happened to me, and you know, I've read about it online. So you don't have to be. You could be a millionaire. You know, it just affects anybody at any time. So yeah, you know, you can't foresee these things happening. And you know, I thought I was ill. I thought I just had a cold, and if I hadn't have gone to the doctors, and that's the thing that grasps me, if I had not have gone to the doctors and trusted my gut, I wouldn't be here. So just trust your gut. You have to understand, you know, it's you that feels the pain, not anybody else.